he's talking about there's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has. And each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. There was 4 episodes. So there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or, produced.
For some reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and fucking hell, it's something. But
is there anything that surprised you from that footage?
The footage, well, I mean, I think it's rare to find someone who's being, talked about all over the country. All eyes were on him, so to speak. And it was really interesting to see his last days of freedom, and what was sort of important to him. Obviously, there's phone calls with his attorneys, with his team. It was very interesting to watch a man who's known for his brand presence. He has a really amazing knack for marketing and all of that, and how he was sort of taking that into account in how he was coming off to the public, in the days leading up to his arrest and indictment.
Like 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. Some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places and you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only.
When Netflix dropped The Reckoning focused on Sean Diddy Combs, viewers caught the vibe almost instantly. The accusations were heavy, the mood was grim, and the timeline already looked ugly. But even with all that, something still felt off. Not missing evidence exactly, more like the raw, uneasy moments that make a story feel exposed instead of carefully managed. The documentary carried impact, sure, but it also felt polished in a way that made people wonder if they were seeing the full picture or just the version cleared for release. That's when the whispers really started. Once reports surfaced that producers may have had access to way more footage than what actually made the final cut, the entire conversation shifted. Suddenly, this wasn't just about what Netflix included. It became about what stayed hidden. And according to people close to the situation, this wasn't throwaway backstage material or unused filler. Some of it was reportedly filmed right before Diddy's 2024 arrest, when pressure was exploding and his image was unraveling in real time. Meaning those unseen clips might not just add context, they could change the entire emotional weight of the story. What makes it hit even harder is who's connected to all of this. You've got 50 Cent, a longtime rival who's never masked his issues with Diddy and clearly knows how to turn controversy into a media storm. Then there's Gene Deal, not some outsider watching headlines unfold, but someone who spent years inside Diddy's circle and keeps insisting the public has only seen a small piece of what's really out there. That combo alone gets attention fast. Then the legal drama pushes it further. Netflix claims everything used was obtained legally. Diddy's side says private material was taken without proper permission. Meanwhile, 50 keeps teasing that there's much more behind the scenes, and Gene Deal keeps backing him up. At that point, one question starts taking over everything. What exactly didn't make the cut, and why?
Reason, Diddy, around the time of his arrest, thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be exonerated later, so I'm going to film all this, and then I can use it in my big comeback later when I'm not in jail. Didn't work out the way he thought, and it turns out he went to jail for a few years. All right, he didn't get the full amount, but he still got a few years. And 50 Cent somehow managed to pay for the footage off of the videographer. Probably Diddy's worst nightmare, this. It's got to be up there. Now, we're going to get into what's in the actual documentary, and fucking hell, it's something. But let's quickly take a look at 50 Cent's press tour, where he looks like a kid at Christmas right now. I've never seen a man this happy when it wasn't on like the day his kid was born.
How did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
50 Cent's a journalist now, is he? He's ruthless.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
Oh God, he's bad to the bone, isn't he? What 50 Cent is doing right now is basically a lesson to us all, right? Maybe we're just not hating enough on the people who are shit to us. And the documentary starts out with Diddy panicking about his public reputation just days before he was due to get arrested. On the phone to his lawyer, trying to come up with strategy.
We need the core theme to be, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong on any front.
By the way, these conversations, the lawyer had no idea he was recording them. them. So when the lawyer's like, yeah, we need everyone to believe you did nothing wrong, it kind of takes away from when the lawyer is out in public saying, yeah, my client is completely innocent, and now he's showing the behind the scenes where he clearly didn't think he was very innocent. So not Diddy's smartest move. However, throughout this journey, you'll see he makes a lot of crazy decisions.
I don't think it's working. I listened. I've been a superb client, as you said. I jumped on the plane. I'm coming to New York, but I'm just running around waiting for a shoe to drop.
He's shitting himself right now, in case you can't tell, and he really doesn't look good.
It's the middle of September and there's still no indictment.
Bro, then you have to have a spokesman. You have to have some sort of comms to constantly be pushing that, Mark. Because you may just be a person that you just may watch CNN. You know what I'm saying? And there's 9 billion people in the world, and 7 billion of them is on Instagram and TikTok.
He's basically trying to get control of the narrative. That's what he's really worried about. He wants public perception to be, this was all bullshit. Unfortunately for him, we had all seen the CCTV of him beating the shit out of Cassie. So we know you're not a good guy, man. That's out there. A statement from your solicitor is really not going to change that.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us, whether they're from this country or from another country. It could be somebody that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business of media and propaganda.
We need to brainwash some motherfuckers right now, and we need people who are used to working with the dirtiest of dirty, because that's what he is, and he's admitting it. How could you let this footage fall into the hands of 50 Cent, my guy? And honestly, it always comes down to money with Diddy, because Diddy didn't get rich just because he was, clever in music. Diddy got rich because he robbed people all the time, and him not taking care of the people around him, it just comes back to bite him a million times over.
It's like we have a movie, you're speaking this language, and you know what I'm saying, we need subtitles, and we're not providing the audience with subtitles. And I invited you to this movie, and you in this thing, you don't know what's going on. You just see you just see the images, quickly. Now it has a whole life of its own.
I gotta say, this whole doc was edited well. When he said you just see the pictures and they cut to the CCTV. Well done, 50. You nailed that, son. If you're going to take him down in style. So you get a clear window from the jump here into Diddy's psyche. He doesn't give a fuck about Cassie or any of these girls. He doesn't give a fuck about anyone. It's save yourself mentality, and it's crisis mode. And you can see on his face, he's got a drug problem. This is at an all-time high of his drug taking, surely, because he is stressed the fuck.
The footage everybody keeps circling back to reportedly comes from the days right before Diddy's September 2024 arrest. And honestly, that timing changes everything. This wasn't random lifestyle content from somebody living carefree. From the way insiders described it, Diddy already seemed aware the pressure was building from every angle. And instead of moving like someone calm or blindsided, he appeared focused on controlling the narrative before it completely spun away from him. That's what makes the behind-the-scenes material feel so heavy. One scene people keep mentioning allegedly shows him inside a hotel room, talking with his attorney over speakerphone. His voice stays measured, but what's being discussed paints a much different picture. The conversation reportedly touches on losing control, public messaging, and making sure people believed he'd done nothing wrong. And according to descriptions, it goes beyond legal strategy into something deeper, reputation management in real time. That difference matters. Because once someone becomes consumed with shaping public perception, this stops looking like basic legal prep and starts looking like damage control under pressure. And the timing hits even harder. These weren't reflective interviews recorded after everything collapsed. This was before the arrest, before courtrooms, before the fallout fully exploded. The footage allegedly captures a moment where Diddy still believed he could contain the situation, while quietly realizing money, status, and influence might not be enough anymore. Once that clicks, it becomes difficult to believe the documentary showed the full picture. Because if the release material alone triggered this much reaction, people naturally assume the unseen footage goes even further, maybe into panic, fear, unraveling, and the raw mechanics of image protection when a powerful figure realizes the walls are closing in fast. That's also why the legal response became so aggressive. Diddy's team says these were private conversations never meant for public view. Netflix and 50 Cent clearly see it differently. And somewhere in the middle sits the possibility making everyone uncomfortable. The most revealing footage may still be the part nobody has fully seen yet.
50, how'd you get it, and what does that scene show?
Well, I mean, you know, you're a journalist, Harvey. Harvey, you would not disclose your sources.
We usually don't.
Yeah, but I got it. Yeah.
What he said.
And what do you think it conveys? Because we see someone trying to pull the strings and talking about, he would say affecting, others would say manipulating the public views of the allegations.
I think that, you know, one big theme of the series is to go behind the scenes to really understand how brilliant you could say Sean Combs is at marketing, at owning his narrative, controlling the narrative at all times. And so why would that stop, you know, when his life is on the line? So I think that, you know, on its face, that's what it is. But as you get deeper in the film, you start to realize, you know, perhaps how some of these tactics, you know, how they really came to present themselves, you know, during the trial.
You show that, his abilities, his early rise.
Right.
Alexandra, you also give time to victims of the alleged abuse. Some of the cases are in different procedural postures. And you show victims who were women and men. Why is that important?
Because, you know, victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, you know, that should... gender should not be a part of that conversation. When you are a victim, you are a victim. And I think that, you know, this series was a platform in a way for these alleged.
One of the biggest mysteries in this entire situation is how footage Diddy allegedly kept so close ever ended up outside his control. Reports say he had been recording himself heavily for what was described as a personal documentary-style project. The goal supposedly wasn't random content. It was to help shape his side of the story later, protect his image, and maybe even build a comeback narrative if he survived the legal fallout with enough reputation left intact. But plans like that depend on loyalty staying solid around you. And apparently, that's where everything started cracking. According to multiple people discussing the situation, payments slowed down, agreements became messy, and trust inside the circle began falling apart. Once that happened, the footage reportedly stopped being private protection and started becoming leverage. And that shift changes everything. Because in environments built on secrecy, once loyalty disappears, the same material meant to protect someone can suddenly become the thing that exposes them. That's why the reported role of videographers matters so much. If the people holding the footage no longer felt protected, respected, or even properly compensated, then the material could quickly stop serving Diddy's interests and start serving someone else's. That's also where 50 Cent's production side is believed to enter the picture. He hasn't fully explained what he's seen or how much access exists, but he also hasn't exactly shut those rumors down either. Instead, he's handled it the way he usually does, dropping hints, cracking jokes, implying there's more, then letting the internet do the rest. And honestly, that strategy works. Because even without releasing additional footage, the suggestion alone becomes its own pressure campaign. People stay locked onto the idea that there are still unseen clips, more context, more private moments, maybe even pieces of the story nobody was supposed to watch. And once that happens, the balance of control completely flips. A man who once controlled access, perception, relationships, and entire rooms at the highest level may now be stuck noticing someone else could be holding the footage tied to his most vulnerable moments. That's why the unreleased material feels bigger than simple scandal. It represents something much worse for a figure like Diddy, a total collapse of control.
And that's what it was about. So that's why you don't see a cameo other than the pictures they used of me on the film in the documentary. I got like 3 or 4 pictures in the documentary that I've seen of myself. You know, some people say they saw more, but I know three different times where I was certain places and you could actually see me in the documentary, and that's the only thing you're gonna get. But the stories that they told in the documentary, bruh, come on. They could have went a whole lot deeper. They could have did a whole lot more. So I ain't in the documentary because that lady that was the director, I think, what's her name? Alex, you know, Alex Staple. You know her name, Mighty? Yo, Mighty, just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look this up, all right? Okay. Her name is Alex Stapleton. The director that I spoke to was Alex Stapleton. She was the one who told me that she was the director, she was the producer, whatever, this, that, and the third, the whole 9 yards. And she was talking mad greasy to me. And listen here, it's no amount, after you talk that kind of talk to me, there's no amount of money she could have paid me anyway for me to get in there. You know, my story is more too valuable, you know, getting in depth with this whole stuff, and it would have helped that documentary a whole lot. You know what I'm saying? In actually, they used all the stuff that I told them and did it the way that I was saying do it. Tim Dog started off with the childhood with Puff and the whole 9 yards. Kirk Burrows do the business part, but they was trying to put people in there like Mark Curry and other people to talk about the streets or what was going on, you know, a certain thing. But Mark can only say so much, you know what I'm saying, because he was an artist, you know, so he wasn't with Puff like I was with him during that time when we was running back and forth here and there and the whole 9 yards. So, you know, Miss Alex Stapleton is the one reason why I'm not in the documentary, but it's all right with me. I've been in a lot of documentaries. I did The Shine, I did the A&E, I did the Discovery Channel, I did the Fox. You know, I've been in a whole lot of different documentaries, and I'm always on the Art of Dialogue. So the people been getting most of the information from here anyway.
Yeah, man, you always on here, man. Always got to bring you on. So with that being said, man, I want to get right into the documentary, man. How you feel about the documentary, man? The behind the scenes footage they got of Diddy leading up to him getting arrested, and how you feel about all that, man?
Well, what I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was going to do something and they're going to say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big, it wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't able to tell that story because they didn't have no intel on that story or what went down, or they didn't do their investigations right.
Gene Deal brings a completely different kind of weight to this conversation because he's not talking like somebody reacting from the sidelines. He speaks like a man who already knows how that world operated behind closed doors. And one point he keeps repeating is simple. Around Diddy, cameras were always there. According to Gene, recording people wasn't rare, it was normal. Meetings got filmed, events got documented. Even moments that seemed private often weren't. In his view, it was never really about preserving memories. It was about maintaining control. And that changes how people look at the rumored unreleased footage. Because if cameras were constantly part of the environment, then more footage existing isn't the shocking part. The real issue is the possibility that the material no longer belongs to the person who thought it would protect him. Gene almost talks about that outcome like it was destined to happen eventually once loyalty inside the circle started collapsing. That's why his comments hit differently. He's not just implying there's more footage somewhere. He's suggesting the documentary itself may have played things safer than people realize, leaving out certain individuals, stories, connections, and fallout tied to the atmosphere Diddy allegedly built around him. In other words, the public may not have seen the full reckoning at all. They may have only seen the version polished enough to survive legal scrutiny and still make it to release. And that creates an uncomfortable tension around the entire project, because the documentary already caused massive reactions, nonstop commentary, and serious legal pressure. But according to Gene, it still barely scratched the surface. He claims major stories were untouched, key voices were excluded, and deeper layers of the situation never made it on screen. Layers that could make the overall picture feel darker, broader, and way more connected than audiences currently understand. If he's right, then the documentary wasn't the conclusion of the story. It was the opening chapter. And Gene's continued presence keeps reinforcing that idea over and over. The public may only be looking at the carefully selected version, not the full structure sitting behind it. That's exactly why the unreleased footage keeps hanging over everything like a threat nobody can fully ignore.
Everybody want to say that 50 Cent did the whole documentary. He was responsible for doing the whole documentary, what goes in there and what goes out of there. Now, I don't believe that. And I don't believe that he's responsible for everything that goes in there. I don't believe he's responsible for everything that goes out of there. Guys want to say that he's snitching, you know what I'm saying, because he's telling his truth about what went down and what he saw or what he heard or whatever like that. I don't know how to love my enemy. And if I gotta put out the truth about something that he was doing and is wrong, and that was wrong, I don't have no problem with that, 50. Not a problem at all. Keep doing it. Maybe enough men come out and speak out on some bull stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they're saying that Diddy's family is preparing a $1 billion lawsuit over this documentary.
I think they dropped it already. I don't think they ain't gonna have a chance, because before you put something out like that, they're gonna dot their I's and cross their T's. They're gonna make sure everything is in place. And if Puff had friends over there at Netflix, if it haven't came down, but it showed no, yeah. If it haven't came down yet, they ain't got a leg to stand on.
Yeah, you just made me think of something. I'm sure Netflix has 1 million lawyers, and I'm sure they had plenty of lawyers go over this thing to make sure it was airtight.
Yes, sir.
And they might probably even cut some stuff out that maybe they weren't even sure about. Just probably, man. Well, Gene, I appreciate you taking the time. Dope content as always. And I wish you luck, man. I know, man, you get on these interviews and they go crazy, man.
Yeah, man, listen. A lot of people want to, come at me, and everybody want to find fault in 50, find fault in me, find fault in anybody who's speaking out against the evil shit that's been going on. But what about find fault from the person who did it?
What gives Gene Deal's argument real weight is that he never talks like the documentary closed the case. If anything, he speaks like it was controlled, selectively assembled, and still far from complete. And that matters because he's not casually throwing out claims that extra footage exists somewhere. He connects it to a much bigger idea about how Diddy's world allegedly functioned behind the scenes. According to Gene, cameras weren't occasional. They were part of the system itself. Part protection, part leverage, part status symbol. Once you buy into that idea, the existence of additional footage stops feeling like rumor and starts sounding almost unavoidable. That also explains why reactions around the documentary became so tense so quickly. The issue is no longer just what audiences watched. It's the feeling that what people saw may only represent a fraction of what's actually there. And once the public starts believing that, everything changes. Silence suddenly looks suspicious. Legal responses start sounding calculated. Even the absence of more footage becomes provocative on its own. Gene's comments about Netflix add another layer to it. He seems convinced the platform heavily vetted every second that made the final cut, meaning anything included probably survived serious legal review first. But at the same time, he hints that other material may have been left out because it crossed into territory that was too risky, too uncertain, or too difficult to fully verify. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of gap speculation feeds on. Because once people believe the released documentary was the safe version, attention naturally shifts toward imagining what the unsafe version might contain. That's where the fear around unreleased footage really comes from. Not just the clips themselves, but the possibility that the actual story is much larger and darker than the version viewers were allowed to see. Gene's frustration also points somewhere deeper. He keeps questioning why so much focus goes toward attacking insiders and whistleblowers instead of addressing the person tied to the allegations in the first place. And that's not a minor observation. It speaks to how criticism from inside a powerful circle often gets framed as betrayal, while the behavior being described quietly fades into the background. At that point, the documentary stops being simple entertainment. It becomes a test of who gets blamed when a carefully built public image finally starts falling apart.
Was telling me on his way here, I didn't see this, but apparently there's another 100 hours of Diddy footage on the cutting room floor.
So Diddy is still doing press. I mean, Diddy. 50.
Diddy is not doing press.
No,
he's doing press on the yard.
He's doing press, like he's doing push-ups. No, 50 is still doing press, and obviously with the success of the Reckoning documentary, he's talking about there's more footage. There's 140 hours that he has, and each episode was only maybe an hour, I think. There was 4 episodes, so there's at least 130 something more hours that he hasn't edited or produced, and he's saying that he may put it out on YouTube just to put it out there,
like on his 50 Cent Devo page.
I don't know if it'll be on his page, but he just said, he doesn't know if he's going to release it with Netflix or through Netflix. He might just, put it out on YouTube or wherever, some other platform. But the one thing that he said that was interesting is, he said, because you see people out here trying to, say, oh, the documentary can paint a narrative, this, that, and the third. And his words were, if you see the rest of this footage, there will be no more, kind of like, oh, you can paint this narrative. It's pretty clear cut, the things that are being said in the documentary, the things that he still can't believe Puff, because he says that a lot. Like, he can't believe Puff actually recorded all of this.
Yeah.